address?
Confuses the issue. Okay, guess we're all here.
Do you think of any other thing to put on here?
Right, I'm going to call back into session the regular meeting of the Albany Unified School District Board of Education for September 10th, 2013. And let's see, may we have a roll call, please?
Student Board Member Chen.
Here.
Student Board Member Lee.
Here.
Board Member Rosenbaum.
Here.
Board Member Maris.
Here, if we close that back door, the echo goes away.
Board Member Lowe.
Here.
Is it too
Vice
warm in
President
here?
Knight.
Here.
President Black.
Here. Thank you. Now, for those who wish to participate, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, in closed session, the board approved a 3-day suspension without pay for employee number 2013-1421-4. No other action was taken in closed session. We need to approve the agenda. Do we have a motion?
I'll move the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, does anyone have anything they want to discuss or pull on the consent calendar?
Yeah, I'd like to pull the minutes.
You want to talk about the minutes?
Yeah, just
Okay,
discuss. Yeah.
anything else? John? Okay, Alan, it's you.
On page 15 of the packet, minutes referring to the adjustment of the sidewalk at Ocean View School. I made a statement that we have to be concerned about impacting the creek banks when we move the trail or add a sidewalk. Creek people will be concerned about how we do that. I didn't see that in the minutes. I talked to Jackie, and I think it's going to be in the minutes.
Yes, I have that.
Thank you.
Yes, I do. I have that.
Thank you.
Okay, so when we approve the consent, we'll approve it with that amendment to the minutes? Okay, Pat?
I apologize. I do have one question on the consent, and that is on page, it's about the resolution 2013-1405. That is page 48. And I wanted to ask Assistant Superintendent Harden, for the purposes of my understanding and for anyone in the audience who wants a clear understanding of what exactly is the appropriations limit being referred to in this resolution? And then secondly, will the changes in funding that will come to us through the local control funding formula affect the 2013-14 projection listed on this resolution?
Well, for the LCFF funding, will it affect the projection? It will change the numbers, but the way the calculation works is that your appropriations limit will always be the same as your total amount that's calculated within the software. So if our revenue goes up, that calculation then will just go up to match it.
Okay.
And so the purpose of the GAN limit is, and it's sort of convoluted, but it was historically so that government spending could not grow at a faster pace than the revenue that's being generated by government as a whole. So because it used to be, if you remember, government bloat, Prop 13, they wanted to assure, especially cities, counties, and public school districts, weren't expending at a rate faster than the general public. So this is sort of a check to make sure that we're not. But because of the way the calculation works, we will never exceed that unless perhaps in maybe 10 years we receive a substantial amount more of funds. But other than that, it will always be the same. And the caveat to that is, even if you do go over, like, let's say your amount, your amount is 20 million and all of a sudden you're at 21 million, you simply just submit a new resolution asking to increase your GAN limit. So it's sort of, a lot of people wonder why bother, why are we doing this calculation? It's a requirement generated from Prop 13.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, anything else on the consent? Okay, I have to, do we have a motion on the consent?
I'll move the consent calendar with the change in the minutes presented by Member Maris.
Okay, all
I'll second that.
right, can I get a roll call on the consent, please? Sure.
Student Board Member Chen, please vote yes or no.
To approve the consent calendar, okay.
Student
Thank
Board Member Lee,
Yes.
Board Member Rosenbaum,
Aye.
Board Member Maris,
Aye.
Board Member Lowe,
Aye.
Vice President Knight,
Aye.
President Black,
Okay, I need to abstain from checks number 503-06755, 503-08075, 502-79814, 502-80137, 502-85115, and 502-85692. Otherwise, aye.
I got those, thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Let's see. So that's the consent. And next we have student member report.
So this is the first time that Albany High School has something to report. The list is pretty short, but it has a lot of quality content inside. One, addressing leadership activities. Leadership meeting advisory for the first few times this year. Leadership Advisory Ms. Hudson has introduced a new monthly spirit day called Cougar Pride Day, designed to add more spirit to Albany High School, and will be implemented every last Friday of the month. And regarding clubs, Debate Club plans on further into activities despite the lack of a non-required coach. And second, Build On's trip to Nepal last year raised a total of $50K. This year, they turned their attention to building a school in Nicaragua. And finally, the Flex program that involves McGregor High School has introduced a new peer tutoring service in which the school will pay students to teach their peers. This is a new alternative to the original volunteer tutoring program. And this is all.
Thanks. Would you introduce our new board member?
Yes. This is Chelsea Chin, also senior at Albany High School.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be on the board.
Thank you.
Well,
Welcome.
Chelsea.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
It's good to
You're
have you.
welcome. I had a quick question of clarification. I actually had some parents of freshmen ask me about the debate team, and I felt it was in transition since the former faculty member has left. So what did you say about it, the debate team? Did you say the debate team is trying to go forward anyway, or?
So as of now, Debate Club does not have an official advisor. However, we just need like a teacher chaperone to go with us on our tournaments. We do not need a permanent advisor. So Debate Club has decided to split its meetings like one day in one classroom, one day in another classroom. But no matter what, the club will go on.
Okay, thank you so much, and best of luck with it. It's a wonderful
you.
activity. If anybody in the community or any of you out in the audience know of someone who has a background in speech and debate or and has time to volunteer, it's been a wonderful program at Albany High School, but right now they don't have someone with the expertise to lead it. So definitely let us know if you can think of someone.
Good. Thanks, Pat. Okay, first staff report, I guess the only staff report tonight, Ocean View Elementary School Perceptions Subcommittee report. Pat, are you presenting that?
Good evening, everyone. I have stepped down from my role as a board member because I am also a member of the, what was at that time called the Ocean View Perceptions Committee, and I am going to give that report and give a summary of that report and let my fellow committee members give any feedback they want, get any comments from the public, and let the board discuss it. We are actually going to refer to most of the notes that we took are in the board packet, and it is on page, can someone give me the page number?
65.
Thank you. Just let me give you a little bit of background. A subcommittee can be formed by the board for different reasons. In this case, President Black was responding to requests and comments from the community that showed concern about perceptions and misperceptions, perceived misperceptions in the community about Ocean View Elementary School. So he asked that a committee be formed, and I was fortunate enough to have some wonderful staff members. If I get the title wrong, please forgive me, Peter. Our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Peter Parenti, and two principals from the elementary schools, Alexia Ritchie, who's at Marin, and is Terry here tonight? She was going to. And Terry participated, which was very important. She's the principal at Ocean View. Her perspective was important. And then Jonathan Knight and myself. We met twice, and I'll just give you a summary of our purpose. And then I'll briefly tell you a little bit about the short-term and long-term recommendations that we made and take questions from the board and the public and see what you think you can support. As a committee, we came together and worked together to come up with the following statement of purpose for our committee. It is a little broader than we originally, than you might have originally heard the purpose being. It was to recommend to the board short and long-term strategies to establish and maintain an educated awareness of the common strengths and unique features of our elementary schools. All right, then, keeping that purpose in mind, we did a series of 2 meetings. We brainstormed. We took ideas that we received from the Equity Committee and other groups who had participated in discussions about perceptions about Ocean View, and we came up with the following. The first 3 are the recommended short term. We tried to think of things that could be done immediately at low or very small cost to effectively communicate common strengths and unique features about our 3 elementary schools. First, number 1, be mindful. Everyone should be mindful of general messages and using neutral or positive vocabulary when referring to any of the elementary schools. Something that we really want to go out to the community and to understand that I hope the board will support this, you know, in making this something that we really want clear. Secondly, we came up with the idea of school and PTA leaders, the principals and PTA leaders from each elementary school, and we thought about maybe including the middle and high school as well, coming together to brainstorm a list of the strengths about their schools, all together, that, you know, we would do different activities so that everyone could hear about them. Brainstorm ways together that they could encourage parent involvement, brainstorm needs that they have in parent involvement, fundraising, after-school activities. And we were thinking it might be a mixer and might even be the seed for a PTA council. And since I know many of the PTA leaders and I know how hard they've worked, I would love the district to maybe underwrite or the board to host it, maybe have a little meal, just so that, you know, we could not only thank the PTA leaders, but draw on their expertise. Then we would take the information we got from that, and we would implement number 3. The 3 elementary principals would work together to produce one brochure with descriptions of the common strengths and unique features of each school. They would use some of the ideas generated from the PTA gathering, and the material for this brochure could be used for website material and other forms of outreach in the community. And then we would have fair and equal and messages and outreach for all 3 of the schools, and all 3 of the schools would have the same capacity to produce this. And we were going to suggest that the district could underwrite the expense of maybe a graphic artist to help with the brochure design. That would really help the principals who have so much to do. Okay, so those are short-term suggestions. Then, based on recommendations from previous committees and task force, including the Equity Task Force and the Reconfiguration Committee that met this past spring, we prioritized 7 items that we would like the board to consider directing the staff to study, and we prioritized them in order of importance. Number 1, look at the enrollment and transfer policies and procedures for the elementary schools. Number 2, look at how the English language learner programs are structured throughout the district and at each elementary school. Look, and I'm going to have my fellow committee members maybe clarify some of these if I don't make them clear. Number 3, take a look at the special education programs and the populations at the 3 schools and how they're distributed and how they're supported. Number 4, consider providing additional administrative and/or supervisory resources to schools, to the elementary schools with larger facility footprint and student population. This would be a matter of safety, you know, and fairness for that student population. Number 5, gather parent involvement and volunteer data and volunteer recruitment data so that we could have some sense of whether there was equity or how we could help across the sites. Number 6, consider a pre-K language assessment or perhaps an assessment of returning first graders that takes into consideration the university calendar and the calendar of international students and scholars who come to Ocean View, and incoming kindergartners. And finally, number 7, this was some of our personal favorites, but we realized it might take longer term planning, and that is a magnet school concept for Ocean View. Possibly, for example, with a language immersion focus, with the idea of saving a percentage of spaces in a magnet program like that for children in the Ocean View neighborhood and for UC Village residents. So, my fellow committee members, I'm sure I left something out or made something not clear, so would any of you like to add anything? You're welcome to come up and clarify. It's been a whole 2 months since we talked about this, so if there's anything you'd like to add, seems clear to you? All right, well, maybe you can help me if there are any questions. All right, I would suggest maybe if there's any public questioning or comments.
Well, we can start. I have a kind of a general question on your list of long-term solutions. It's not clear, to me at least, for all of them, what exactly your goal or expected outcome is. For example, on number 6, a pre-K language assessment, how does that address the issue?
So I am not an expert in this area, so I would welcome Mr. Parenti to come up.
Good evening. A pre-K language assessment, as I understand it, would help address the issue that when you have a larger number of English language learners arriving at a school site on the first day of school, it takes a longer amount of time for us to be able to assess their language proficiency, thereby prolonging the date when we can start the instructional program. So if you have, let's say, 100 or 200 English language learners and you need to assess all of them, then it prolongs the instructional services to start maybe in the 3rd or 4th week of September, whereas at another school site, if you're having only a few kids to assess, you can actually start instruction earlier. And so the idea would be to invite as many as possible to come to the school site before school starts to get a language proficiency exam conducted. We can start those as early as July 1st in California.
Okay, so you basically starting the process earlier so that everyone can get started at the same time.
Right, so that hopefully from the first day or from the first week or the first 2 weeks of school, all 3 campuses can start their English language learner services at the same time.
Okay, interesting.
So we're talking about because the length of the actual prescribed test that we have to give to all English language
Yeah,
learners.
it's a one-on-one
Takes so
assessment.
long, and it's one-on-one.
The Sept exam is a one-on-one assessment for the listening and speaking components. They take a long time. If you've got a lot of students to assess, it takes a longer amount of time to know where to put them in the classes, and you don't start your classes until it's all done.
Would it behoove us to try to find a way to do self-testing for all incoming language learners throughout the district rather than pigeonholing one school, getting those done so that we can start from day one?
We would like to. The challenge is
Knowing that it
getting-
would take a lot longer at specific sites.
Yeah, there are a few challenges. One of them is actually knowing who to call before school starts to ask them to come and bring their child in. You can usually address some of them. Sometimes you just don't know until the first day of school when the parent comes in and registers their child, especially on the University of Village when they're enrolling their children that very same week. But it is a strategy that can work. It can save us time if we get it done beforehand.
Another idea might be to have a proportional number of folks who are qualified to actually administer the CELT exam, given the number of students that we identify.
Yeah, that would be another strategy that would work.
And one thing to consider is, given the way
Could you step up to the mic, Pat?
my voice is usually so loud. One thing to consider is, given the new LCFF formula, which particularly gives extra money for English language learners, that if the board so chose to have the staff investigate that, that might be an excellent use of the extra funding that we would get. Were there additional questions from the board about some of the long and short-term suggestions we had?
Alan?
I also read the notes that you had in the packet from meetings that led up to your final report. And in there, API scores were mentioned as a way of informing people about, parents about each individual school's characteristics. I don't see it in the final report, and I'm kind of glad to see that. And I think API scores are going to start disappearing, or they're going to take a very different form. So
That's right.
I'm glad to see
Board Member
that's not. I'm glad to see it's not explicitly stated, but hopefully it's not going to be a part of the new.
I think in the
Elementary
end we
school.
decided it wouldn't, but I think that there was very good discussion that pointed out that the API scores of the different elementary schools have been very, very close, almost equitable, and that
I
may
think they
not
are.
be the perception in the community and beyond. But in the end, it was decided we didn't need to perhaps stick the numbers on there. But it was just part of the general discussion. Thank you. That's a good point, Board Member Maris.
Also, I think each school really has a lot of similar characteristics, but I think particularly Ocean View draws in a lot of cultural diversity, which can be an incredible asset to a student and a family, I believe, too.
I agree, Board Member Maris, and I know that you're going to be our representative to Ocean View, and I suggest helping out with some of the fairs and so forth. You're going to enjoy the children very much.
I've already, oh, wait a minute, I recognize some people in the audience. I've already signed up for the back to school, and I'm going to miss the first PTA, but don't try to keep me away after that.
You'll be sorry. But, what we've been hearing is really the matter of perception. And all these are great ideas, but, what we've heard from many members of, particularly of the Ocean View community, is we really have to work on having folks understand the value of all our schools. And I know you've made that clear, and I really appreciate that. My time as the rep at Ocean View, that's such a fun place to be at, and there's so much going on.
I agree. Well, the time when I adopted Ocean View was very enjoyable. I enjoyed the community very much. Are there any other questions of clarification from the board members or from the audience before I pressure the board members to adopt some of these recommendations?
So are we going to start taking some of these steps?
I was wondering if there were any questions from the public, but thank you so much, Board Member Maris.
Yes, why don't you come
We
up?
have to agendize that, too.
Hi, my name is Nidia Gonzalez. I'm a parent at Ocean View. I just wanted a little more explanation of the idea of the immersion program. Maybe I didn't hear the whole explanation, but I didn't quite understand what that was.
I would say that, it's very far down on the long-term list, but for many of us, it's perhaps a dream idea. There are various elementary school districts, including one that my niece attends in San Mateo, which have now Mandarin and Spanish and other immersion programs within their schools. And I call it a magnet school because what happens is that people become very interested in that program, and then they are willing to take their child from maybe their neighborhood to that school, and then it sometimes, but not always, diversifies the community. Actually, I feel very firmly that a program like that would draw people from, people are fighting tooth and nail to get into the Mandarin immersion program at Cornell, okay? So if there were an actual program in the schools, I think there would be great interest in it, which is why we actually put down that statement that we would save spaces for local neighborhood kids who might not know to apply. So we would still we wouldn't want it to turn into a program where only the people who had PhDs and could drag their children really far could bring them there. We want it to be for a lot of children. However, it is at this time, it takes a lot of training. We would need, specially trained staff, but it's a dream that I think many people would be interested in.
So just in case there are folks who don't know what an immersion program is,
Thank you, Board Member
explain that for us?
So a bilingual immersion program, models of immersion programs can be different, but normally they would be a program in which children who either speak that language as their native language or do not speak that language at all go into a classroom environment where more than usually 50% of the instruction is in that language. And research has shown that children, particularly who get that instruction young, have many, many benefits. I wish that my son had had that opportunity in this district, and I think it's where many of the more progressive, both private and public, schools are going and thinking about, because we know the future of our world is to be multicultural and to know more than one language. Thank you for that clarification. Are there any other questions or comments? Please come up.
So my name is Serena Good, and I'm a parent in Ocean View. I have 2 kids there. This is my first time to attend the board meeting, and we're talking about perception. So I was wondering, what is that perception that we are trying to address? It wasn't clear to me. Thank you.
We've got some members in the community who could explain that really clearly.
Do you wish to address this, Board Member Black, or should I? President Black?
I'd be glad to address it, and you can correct me or supplement what I say. This issue came up somewhat last year. The board has been working on achieving equity among the 3 elementary schools, and there is a difference in the demographics of the 3 schools, which is quite noticeable, especially at Ocean View, which has a large percentage of the population comes from University Village and has a lot of students born in other countries whose first language is not English. And there are issues at Ocean View. For example, the cars per family is fewer at Ocean View. Ocean View parents, being university graduate students, often have scheduling issues. It's much harder to get volunteers. It's much harder to get drivers for field trips. And it's harder for Ocean View to raise funds for enrichment programs, because most of the funds they manage to raise go to buses for field trips. So these are all issues that the board has been trying to address with regards to equity. And when the board started to put some extra resources into Ocean View to address these issues, some of the parents at the other schools began to get concerned that Ocean View was getting too much attention and that their schools were being cheated somehow. And so there was a perception issue. There was a problem, and the difference, in my mind, between equality and equity, where equality means everybody gets exactly the same amount of money, and equity means maybe some people need more money just to come up to be at the same level as people in the other schools. So we felt we needed to address this perception question first, that the problems at Ocean View weren't because, as some people seem to think, the parents just weren't as engaged or as interested in their children getting a good education, but they actually had financial and scheduling issues that precluded them being as involved or involved in the same way. So we were trying to address, first of all, the perceptions so that we can go from there to addressing the actual physical equity issues. Does that answer the question, Pat?
I think so, and I don't wish, and this is to be, in his description, in my experience in the last 3 years, the PTA and the parents that have been active at Ocean View are among the most active and hardworking volunteers I've seen, and have created, have done great fundraising, and have done a lot for the school. So I don't wish there to be a misperception about what is happening at the school. It may be perhaps a, actually from my own experience in PTAs, it's always a rather small, dedicated group, but at Ocean View, I would say it's a really dedicated group, you know, serving that larger community. So I don't want to leave with a misperception. So
yeah,
I know we have limited
exactly,
time.
Pat, thank you. That's the perception issue, because the parents at Ocean View are certainly working as hard as the parents at the other schools, but then some of the parents at the other schools felt that if they were, they wouldn't need money for buses. So we just want to fix this perception issue.
Are there any other questions or comments about this issue before I prod the board to adopt some of these recommendations? Please come on up.
Sorry, I'll make this quick. My name's Laura Ronay, and I spoke last spring. I had, we're new to the area. So last year I had one at Ocean View, one at Marin, and one in the TK program at Albany Children's Center. This year they're all at the same location, so thank you very much. I'm very appreciative of that. But being in the 3 different locations, I realized it's a communication issue is, I think, part of the perception. So in creating your committee, I really welcome that you utilize the PTA and the whole community, because I think that's the issue, is the perception is people aren't helping out, when in reality, I think another parent last spring said in Germany, she experienced that people don't donate money, or they don't donate their time because that's culturally how they did it where they came from. So we just want to be aware of different experiences, but also if we have a resource at one school, let's share it at another school. If you know, and the other thing that I just wanted to point out in this communication piece is if we can let people know PTA meetings don't need to be on the same day. I had 2 fundraising events last year on the same day. I had PTA meetings always on the same day. I have 4 children, so I can't even be at one school in one spot at the same time. So to be in multiple locations is hard. So I just think if we're all kind of, if we can create like a massive calendar that everybody has their stuff on. So if I want to go to a PTA meeting at Ocean View and support the Ocean View's PTA, I would love to, because Ocean View has something to offer that Marin doesn't or Cornell doesn't. So I really would encourage that consideration in your committee, is communicate, share, and there's plenty of people in Albany, plenty of parents in Albany that are willing to participate and help out. So utilize us.
Thank you very much.
That's a great idea. Let's remember that idea, PTA leaders, like a Google Doc or something of calendars. If PTA council can't meet all the time because we're busy people, then you have a Google Doc where you can all look and see what's going on. I know we're probably getting short on time.
I think we're over.
We're over. So why don't we move into my politely asking the board, let's return to look at the 3 short-term messages. I feel that you would not have any problem with being mindful of general messaging, and we'll try to get that out as we can through our board highlights and so forth for the community. What about the idea of numbers 2 and 3, us underwriting some support of a get-together of all of the PTAs, and then also providing, asking the staff to consider some financial support for graphic artists so that the principals can create a brochure and some outreach that's equitable for all 3 schools? What are your thoughts on that? I would highly recommend.
I'd certainly support that.
Absolutely. I don't know if we can't actually vote on it, but.
No.
Just.
You're right, it's not an action item on the agenda.
Right, so we can perhaps say that the board is interested in having the staff look at these 3 items. Very quickly, the 7 for the longer term, are we particularly interested in having the staff? We did prioritize them, so the staff could certainly go through them from the top, depending on their time, and get back to us with what may seem realistic for them to implement?
I think that would be a great idea, Pat. We could agendize a staff report.
Yeah.
Do you think that's...
In the future.
Just to be clear, some of these things are not brand new. The principal, they're not even old. They're old. But, we've been seeing more collaborative work with the PTAs and the fundraising that goes to all 3 schools instead of just to the one. It's amazing. The equity committee that came together and came up with those kind of recommendations, and that's moved into this. And the 3 principals work really well together, so we know that's ongoing. But I think we need to reinforce that and see what more we can do. So yes, I'm in favor.
So I see this as a good opportunity for review and discussion, and I would like to see it come back for review and approval.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry.
And I would support that too, and thanks very much for an excellent summary of our meeting, which was, or 2 meetings, which were so long ago now, but this really puts it all together, so thank you. And I would support that, yeah.
Thanks to John and Pat and all the other people who put their time in to do this.
So thank you so much, my fellow board members, and I would just like to say I love the PTA leaders, so I would be happy to participate in and also help plan a gathering of the PTA to do some of this together. So thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions to these ideas and for your support of all the schools.
Thanks. Okay, now we come to persons to address the board on matters not on the agenda. And first, I'm going to ask, is there anyone here to address the board on something other than kindergarten PE? Would you come up, please? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then go ahead and make your statement.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, you explain.
Jackie, do you have the timer? I do. Can you set it to 3 minutes? We try to keep our, because we only have so much time here tonight.
Yeah, I'll make this fast. Oh, this is a cool microphone.
Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly. I'm an organizer with Evolve, a Bay Area nonprofit, and I'm here because I want to thank the school board for passing our resolution last week, calling for commercial property owners to pay their fair share in property taxes. As you all probably know, Prop 13 was meant to benefit homeowners, but to protect homeowners, but most of the benefits are going to large corporations. For example, we actually just found out that Chevron alone is saving about $1 billion a year on Prop 13. And in the meantime, California schools have dropped from number 1 to 49 in the whole country in education funding, per pupil funding. So that's just not fair to our students. So Evolve is calling upon 100 school boards and city councils to pass this resolution to reform Prop 13. And next week, the Albany City Council is taking up our resolution at their meeting. So we certainly hope that they will follow the school board's leadership and pass this critical reform. So I strongly encourage folks who support this to attend the school board or the city council meeting next Monday, or at least if you can't go to that, to call the council members and urge them to support this issue that is so critical to the future of California education. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Jackie, would it help you to pass the control to someone else so you can?
Maybe
the
the
cord.
student, can the student board members learn how to use it? I'm terrible at it.
Yes, I'm sure they could. Okay, so anyone else want to address the board on matters other than kindergarten PE? Yes, please.
Hi. I'm Liz Reimuller. I teach third grade at Marin, and I have a student at Albany High School. Waiting to see if the.
It started.
Can I go ahead?
Please go ahead, Liz.
That's okay. Just wanted to say that I didn't get a chance, Pat, on your comment to comment on your presentation, but I was very interested to hear about the special ed distribution that you mentioned regarding the 3 schools, and just want to comment that it seems that we're getting, once again, getting special ed students at Marin School. I don't know exactly how that's happening, but it is really wonderful, and I think it's good for the district, and I think it's excellent for the students, and so I just want to mention that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So just a couple of words of introduction before we start. First of all, you're probably aware that we try to limit comments to 3 minutes just so we can all go home at a reasonable hour. If you want to say something and someone else has already said it, you're welcome to come up, but please just say, I agree with what was said. You don't have to say it again. And then the board has been receiving a lot of emails and communications with regard to the kindergarten PE. And just to give you a little background information, we have had an unprecedented increase in enrollment in the elementary grades this year, unexpected number of students enrolling in our school. We are completely out of classroom space in order to keep the classes to the size we want. We just don't have anywhere to put everybody. You hear the LCFF acronym frequently. That's the Local Control Funding Formula. That's our governor's new way of funding schools. And it comes with a class size reduction formula. We need to try to keep our classes below the numbers in the LCFF class size reduction formula, or we lose funding. So that's a concern. So we have this combination of a lot of extra students, not enough classroom space, and a class size reduction formula that's driving things. And then we have the teacher's prep schedule, which is a contract item and therefore negotiable. And as the contract is currently under negotiation, we can't comment on it. But that finding time in the day for the teacher's prep, at the same time we have not enough classroom space and too many students, is just a really horrific scheduling problem. And the removal of some of the time devoted to PE by a specialist, not the total amount of time of PE, but the time that we have a specialist to deliver PE. And the reason it's related is because the PE is usually delivered while the teachers are doing their prep. So the kids are taken out of the classroom, the specialist delivers the PE, the teacher can use that time for prep. So the classroom space, the prep schedule, the number of students, it's all tied up together in a really horrific scheduling problem. And the superintendent and staff are dealing with this, and their short-term fix was to make this change to PE. We have no intention of taking PE away from kindergarten. The board and staff believe that it's important for the kids, and we're working to find a way to bring it back. We are interested in hearing what you have to say. We encourage you to come up and say it. But I just wanted you to know that we can't, this isn't on the agenda. We can't discuss it with you today. We will get back to you either by scheduling a special conversation, a special event, whatever we can do to get the word out to you, what solutions we're thinking of and what solutions we find. Today we can't give you those solutions. So we'd love to hear what's on your mind, what your priorities are. That's the basic background of what's going on. So with that, if you want to come up and talk, and form an orderly line and just give your name. And when you see the little light turn red, your 3 minutes are up. And we'd appreciate it if you could yield the floor. Yes, please, come on. I've talked enough. Okay, so state your name and go ahead.
Good evening, members of the board and Superintendent Stevenson. I appreciate this opportunity to speak about an important issue, and I also appreciate the...
Sorry, can you tell us who you are?
I'm just about to.
Okay.
But okay, I wanted to say thank you. First, I also wanted to say thank you for what you just told us. It is helpful. My name is Kim Haltener. I've been teaching kindergarten at Ocean View for the past 10 years. I'm here representing all of the kindergarten teachers in the district. I've come tonight to speak about an issue that concerns all of us, the degradation and devaluing of the kindergarten program. 10 years ago, the kindergarten program, with the support of state funding, had a student-teacher ratio that did not exceed 20:1. It was an AM/PM model with an instructional aide for 1 hour daily, as well as a partner teacher supporting the students. Although the teaching day was shorter than it is now, students received a 3 30-minute period with specialists, 2 with our PE specialists and 1 with a credential librarian, both of whom developed excellent programs that targeted the needs of our youngest learners. Budget crunches forced class size to grow, reaching as high as 27:1 for the past few years. Instructional aid time disappeared and has not reappeared, despite promises that it was a priority issue and would be reinstated this year. As our population has grown, 2 of our 3 sites have experienced a modified program where kindergartners receive 2 library classes and only 1 PE class. Kindergarten teachers never believed that 2 library periods and 1 PE class was in the best interest of children, but that we were experiencing budget challenges and that a compromise was necessary until education funding was restored. This year seemed to bring hope. The state, recognizing the importance of a lower student-teacher ratio, is guiding us to class sizes that do not exceed 24:1. Although higher class size than research would support, it's still a move in the right direction, and we're thankful to Governor Brown and the CTA for augmentation to our budget that allows us to move in that direction. Yet although kindergartners now have a longer day with an early bird, late bird program that allows intense focus on the core subject of literacy, they're suddenly being offered only 2 classes with our specialists, 1 PE and 1 library. With an improved budget, we are forced to ask why the change, which you just expressed pretty clearly. Although kindergarten PE is not mandatory, kindergarten standards for physical education exist, and the grade level is required to meet those standards. They are good standards, developing fitness, cooperation, and the ability to make good choices toward a healthy lifestyle. Research overwhelmingly supports a positive correlation between exercise and children's readiness to learn. I have like 2 sentences. Physical education teachers have the training and equipment to provide the high quality of instruction that Albany families expect. We disagree with what appears to be a short-sighted way to solve a scheduling problem due to increased enrollment. We want what's in the best interest of our children. Our children deserve their 2 PE classes back. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie, can we turn off that beep? And usually we have the yellow come on after 2 minutes. Is that possible?
Did board member Maris wishes to make a quick suggestion before the next speaker?
Yeah, normally don't have clapping after each person speaks. It gives us a chance to hear sort of an unbiased testimony. People don't clap. There's an impression left there. It also takes a lot longer to get through all of your comments. So if you could refrain somewhat on the clapping, if it's really possible.
We should be getting a yellow at 1 minute now, and then you'll get a red and no beeping.
Great.
Nancy,
Okay.
I don't want to interrupt you.
Well, technology problems here. Okay, thank you.
I think I said it right.
Am I waiting for the green?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Hello, I'm Nancy Henderson, the Adapted Physical Education Specialist for all 6 of Albany's schools. I teach children with disabilities and sometimes their typical peers from preschool through 12th grade. I've been teaching physical education for half of my life, and half of those years have been in Albany. I've served on the Community of Respect and the Wellness and the Pool committees, and I know that this community understands the need for educating the whole child, intellectually, emotionally, socially, and motorically. I think we get it in Albany, and I know our PE specialists provide excellent programs because I've witnessed them all. I think motor development is a critical foundational aspect of a child's growth, and being able to move effectively has a vast impact upon one's ability to learn, especially a young child's. We live in an increasingly sedentary world. It's not like when I was a kid. Children now have to be escorted by an adult in order to go outside in their neighborhoods and play safely. Kids are being marketed to and drawn by technology, and they demonstrate preferences early on for accessing their iPads over accessing the natural environment. Childhood obesity, early onset diabetes, and heart disease in young children, we've all read those statistics. Now more than ever before, we need to offer free, appropriate educational opportunities to our children so they can thrive. I was drawn to work in Albany because the district has historically employed credentialed physical education specialists in all of the schools. We specialists work with an inclusion focus, striving to ensure every child feels safe and successful in PE classes. We want to teach them to grow healthy and fit, proud of their abilities, respectful of the abilities of others. Why would anyone be in favor of offering fewer opportunities for 4- and 5-year-olds to learn about how to move and become their healthiest selves? Motor neurons and behavioral patterns are organizing themselves at a tremendously rapid pace in the primary years. Why would the board buy into accepting less than a credentialed teacher to implement this vital aspect of the curriculum at this critical time in our history? It unsettles me and insults my professional pride to imagine our Board of Education acting to cut kindergarten PE. It's going to mean hiring a new professional, one who collaborates with the specialist who's already on site for the very practical and daunting task of sharing facilities and scheduling classes. This itinerant physical education, a comrade of my own, teacher would need to be at least a half-time certificated employee, in my opinion, even to arrive in the right place at the right time at each of 3 elementary schools and the TK site, set up with their equipment and ready to roll out their well-articulated curriculum. So Albany, let's allocate some of this new money to motor development for our kindergartners. They are pumped to participate.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joel Gildersleeve, and I am the physical education specialist at Cornell Elementary. I have a multiple subject teaching credential from San Francisco State University, as well as a single subject credential for teaching physical education from SFU as well. In addition to that, I've spent the last 15 years teaching recreational sports and physical education to elementary-aged kids specifically, and have spent the last few recent years developing a specialized kindergarten through 5th grade PE year-long curriculum based entirely on the California content standards for PE. I think that would qualify me as a specialist at what I do. I'm in full support of the hiring of a credentialed PE instructor to cover the combined 14 half-hour slots covering TK and kindergarten that the current 3 PE teachers at the elementary level cannot cover in total. I think it's unfair to not give the youngest students their full time with a PE specialist because their time with the specialist truly is special. The reason why these lessons cannot simply be made up by their regular classroom teachers is that the lessons and experiences they get with the specialist cannot in most cases be duplicated by the classroom teacher due to lack of equipment, space, and put simply, expertise. PE specialists specialize in physical education. The activities, curriculum, and presentation of concepts are constantly given attention and reflection, resulting in 36 weeks of meaningful physical education lessons. When this special curriculum is then cut in half the time, half the lessons, half the experiences, it really makes it difficult to believe that the students will get the whole picture that we want them to expose them to at that early age. It makes it difficult to expect them to gain mastery over the 44 different individual physical education benchmarks for kindergarten alone when their specialized learning time is cut in half. I believe that at this age they need exposure to the entire curriculum created diligently with them in mind. In closing, I don't think it's fair to start out our youngest students at a disadvantage in an area that benefits them as much as physical education does. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Wilbur Obata. I'm Marin School kindergarten teacher. I have observed PE instruction delivered by our specialist teachers, and I'm impressed and truly grateful for the high quality of instruction they provide for our kindergarten students. The PE activities that I have observed include instruction of movement skills using specific language and vocabulary reflecting the body of knowledge and training which can only be provided by a PE specialist teacher. In addition to delivering the large motor development experience, our PE specialist teachers also reinforce the social interaction skills for the kindergarten student. Physical education taught by a specialist teacher is an integral component of our kindergarten core curriculum goals. We kindergarten teachers really value the PE specialist teachers for their expertise and balance that they bring, background, and which they bring as a result of their specialist credential. One part-time PE specialist teacher, $20,000. The lifelong knowledge, skills, and experience gained by our kindergartners, priceless.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Johnson, and I am a kindergarten teacher at Cornell School. And I'm also here with my kindergarten colleagues, Kathy Evans, Edie Johnson, and April Stewart. We figured out that amongst us, the 4 of us have, let's see, what do we have? We have 89 years of experience teaching in Albany. Rather impressive, I would say. But we're here tonight because we're very concerned and shocked by this new development in the reduction of PE instruction to our youngest children in the district. Over the past 3+ decades, reduction of PE for any children in Albany elementary schools has never been considered until recently. At Cornell, we've been biting the bullet on this for 2 years. Our students have received only 30 minutes of PE instruction per week since 2011, 2012. We cooperated with the district when it told us it was unable to hire a part-time PE teacher, despite the inequity created by this decision. We fully expected, with the hard work from the community and the Education Association to get Prop 30 passed, that our TK and kindergarten students would regain what they deserve: equitable services across the district, 60 minutes of PE instruction per week. We value the expertise of our PE teachers, and we're troubled that our children are missing out on 30 minutes of specialized instruction every week. We are professionals. We know that's not enough movement. We supplement, but we also know that we can't come close to duplicating the expert instruction provided by the PE teachers. we understand and recognize the physical education needs of our youngest students.
A disappointment for us is that when ATA leadership objected to the continued and spreading erosion of PE instruction to our youngest learners, the superintendent threatened to break our very important agreement that we had that the hour between 2 and 3 would be available to kindergarten teachers to administer individual district-required assessments. We were told that we would be made to work in the first grade classes during their late bird time as a way to extend our instructional day. Now, each one-on-one assessment can take an hour, broken up into several sessions depending on the stamina of the child. We make appointments after school. We bring children from their daycare. Parents pick them up later. They hang around with playing with the children and then till our time for an appointment. We do this 2 or 3 times a year, depending on the progress of the student and how much has to be finally reassessed at the end of the year. And we figure it averages about 58 hours of assessing during the school year at our current class size of 22 to 23. And if this threat is followed through with, we're not quite sure when we will be able to administer these assessments. We want you to understand the needs of our children. We want you to maintain the 30 minutes of library instruction per week from the librarian and to restore 60 minutes of PE instruction per week with the PE teacher, and to honor the assessment time agreed upon by the kindergarten teachers and the administration. Contractual issues of prep are being used at the expense of our TK and kindergarten students. They deserve the 60 minutes of PE instruction that elementary children in Albany have had for decades.
Hi, my name is Louise Burhow. I have 2 children, a 4th grader at Cornell and a kindergartner at Cornell, as you can see by my new bracelet. And so from the first speaker's point, I just wanted to underscore that of how drastic I've seen the changes between my 4th grader's kindergarten experience and my current kindergartner's experience, and how vital PE is, especially with rates of obesity rising, children being marketed to awful products at such a young age, being glued to iPads and everything else that I have a strong opinion on, and it's just not in their best physical benefit. And these are decisions that we need to be able to make, and I really appreciate the board's responsibility in making this happen. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Heidi Salah. I'm a mother of a kindergartner in Marin, and I'm also a college professor, so I'm very vested in education on all levels. And I'm asking a clarification here. So I'm not quite sure I see the connection between the class size and the cutting for PE, so can you please elaborate on that a little bit for me?
Superintendent, would you like to address that?
Yes, we're really at an unprecedented size in terms of the K-3 classes total across the district. And that is one of the key factors of us not being able to deliver prep as we know it needs to be delivered.
So the state is not funding us enough?
State never funds us enough.
Well,
but
I understand that.
The issue really is that we don't have enough slots within the program to be able to provide enough PE for everybody who would normally be getting it. And so we're working on that.
Well, my follow-up question to that then, thank you for the clarification, is there a way to rotate the schedule so it's not just one student group or grade that's impacted by it?
Certainly. That's a possibility.
And is that something that perhaps I'm recommending, and I'm sure someone else has recommended, but so it's not just the kindergartners who are getting...
Well,
I mean, that's worst case scenario. I don't want PE to be cut at all.
I think that PE doesn't, I think that the real answer is to figure out a way to provide PE.
Right. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joy Knott. I'm a parent at Marin, and I have 4 children, and my oldest being at middle school, and my youngest in kindergarten. And like Louise said, the experience between the 6th grader and the current kindergartner is so to use Supervisor Black's word, horrific. It is horrific to see how many 5-year-old children are sitting in there with one teacher, and then now another blow to take away PE. I'm not sure our little guys are going to be able to concentrate on Fletcher's Place and learning their ABCs and ones if they can't run around and be in a class outside with a qualified teacher. So it's very upsetting. I know that my story is not uncommon in the sense that my family moved to Albany because of the schools. How many people have done that? And now I'm afraid, I'm afraid that once families arrive and their kindergartners enter the school district, it's pretty disappointing. And I'm afraid that our reputation is way on the line, and that it's going to become, or the quality of our schools is becoming more of an urban myth. So please, I implore you to come up with another solution. If it is in fact a scheduling problem, and in fact there is money there, of course I'm not versed on the details of that, but there's got to be another way besides taking away 30 minutes of PE time from our youngest guys.
So we can't really comment in any kind of detail, but I just want to be clear that I believe that the board is committed to solving this problem, restoring the program, and asking our staff to come up with a solution and present it to us and the public as soon as possible.
Carrie Dunnigan, ATA. Thank you, Ron.
You're welcome.
I speak on behalf of the teachers and the parents and the kindergartners. We really appreciate your openness to this. I just want to raise a couple quick things. And, you know, we keep hearing unprecedented enrollment, and I understand that. I also know that I met with Superintendent Stevenson last fall to discuss our rising enrollment. And so between that, we knew this was happening. In the winter, we knew that Governor Brown and CTA were pushing for lower class size enrollment. This was all in the works. We've known for a year that these are issues. So I'm wondering why it's August and, well, I know, I'm sorry, I'm back to, kind of going back to my conversations in August. Why it was August, and, you know, all of a sudden, we have all these surprising enrollment issues. There is nothing surprising or new about this. This has been coming for months, and our district didn't prepare for it. And that I don't understand why. Second of all, there are a couple things I just want to clarify. One was we were not told that the kindergarten teachers would be made to work in the first grade classrooms. We were told they could be made to work in the classroom. And I only say that because I have spoken a number of times, and we want to be clear that every time we come up here, we are honest, we are not misquoting, and we are not trying to misrepresent anything. Lastly, Kim and I stepped out to talk for a moment because hearing that this is now temporary and the district is looking for a solution, we're thrilled because when Kim and I met with Superintendent Stevenson last week to begin the grievance process, we were not informed that this was temporary, that the district was looking for a solution, rather that the lawyer said this could be done, and that was the breaks. So it is hard on some level to hear some of this because now it feels like everybody coming out here and putting all this energy and effort to try to reach out to the district was not necessarily, everything wasn't completely truthful. You know, this was a first, we were hearing about this, we met, and we were not told that was the case. So rather, it would be wonderful if we would spend less time looking for loopholes in our contract and more times finding ethical solutions for our kids.
Good evening, Superintendent Stevenson, board members. My name is Lori Hendrickson. I have a kindergartner at Marin and a 6th grader at Albany Middle School. This taking away PE is, oh, I can't even tell you. But I understand the issues of dealing with, your mandates from the state. And when we came here last season to ask for lower class sizes, this was never mentioned to us, that PE was possibly a PE taken away. Now there are no aides in our kindergarten classrooms. The class sizes are packed. I've been in there helping. I mean, can I ask the board, is there anybody hiring a facilities master planner to look down the future 1 year from now, 2 years from now, how Albany School District's buildings are going to be expanded? And also, I want to know when there is a target deadline for finding a solution to this. Because I know it's temporary and it's told to us, but it could be 9 months from now. I mean, it's quite frustrating, and I know you guys hear that a lot. I know you're working hard, but you're taking away our PE from the kindergartens. We have no aides, we have overcrowded classrooms, and there's no music for the last 2 years. What next? Snack time? Math? Yes, it's a public school system. We're a great school district, but now I'm not feeling that it's so great anymore. And a lot of us parents step up to volunteer, come here every, month for board meetings, donate thousands of dollars, pay exorbitant property taxes for a small piece of house, and it's incredibly frustrating. So I know I read a recent article in the Sacramento Bee that administrative costs were being cut to support the school district. So maybe we can look at some administrative costs. And I don't mean cutting the teachers' salaries, cutting the students' time, cutting PE. Let's get that part-time, qualified PE teacher in to give the kids what we need. We've heard the facts from the experts in the front line, and it's just incredibly sad here. And we all are willing to help as a community. And it's really frustrating to hear this. So just so you know, we're all here to support you, but we really need to start seeing results and not more cutting. I don't want to go to school next week and my teacher's telling me, oh, by the way, they cut out snack time. Okay, thank you.
Just in response to one thing you asked, the facilities master planning process is well underway. I think next board meeting we'll have a report on?
Yes, the 24th.
Hi, Liz again. I want to say that I know that there's not classrooms right now, so great for the facilities master planning. I invite you all, I know you've been at the school some, but please come down. Please see what it's like to spend your day with 27, I'm talking 27 across the board in these classes right now, not just K, I'm talking first through third, we're at 27 with one adult in the room. We're trying to teach everything. We have we have wonderful parents helping us, but be very clear, these wonderful parents cannot do things that we need done. They can't handle anything that's confidential, first of all. I can't have them doing anything that has to do with scores or testing or assessing or any of that. An instructional aide can help with those things. The parents oftentimes have to be elsewhere. They have younger children who are getting sick. If somebody's hired, then they have to be in the classroom. We really, really, really need some aides. Now, first and foremost, I'd say we need lower class size, but I understand we can't cram them into the closets at this point. So we're going to need classrooms eventually, but please, could we consider getting some aides? Come on down and see what 27 in a line looks like. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ann Griffith. I teach third grade at Ocean View. And I was hoping someone would say my point so I wouldn't have to say it, but I just want to remind people that all these new students we're over-enrolled. All these new students come with money. So to say we can't afford to hire a teacher, it's like they came with the money to hire the teacher. So, and that would not even be new spending, it would be continued spending. So that's a solution right there.
Thanks. Anyone else? We will be discussing the budget later on in today's meeting, so if you have budget issues or questions, we really welcome you to stay around, listen to the budget presentation, and ask questions or make comments at that point, too. Last year's budget. But once the budget's on the table, we can answer questions. Anyone else? I want to thank you all very much for coming down here. We really value your input. We certainly are working as hard as we can to solve this problem, and your suggestions and opinions are important to us and will be taken into account. Thank you. Okay, moving on, we come to review and discussion items. We have our annual Board of Education self-evaluation, and then the superintendent's search. I want to be sure we have time to get to our unaudited actuals financial report. So I'm going to suggest I'll keep an eye on the clock, but we are running pretty late right now, though the meeting was scheduled to end around 9, so we did have a little of extra time. So depending on how these next two discussions go, I might ask that we eliminate the board policy discussions tonight and move them to a future meeting.
I would suggest that we move those board policies at least to the end of the meeting, and then we can, if we don't get to them, we don't get to them.
Yeah, okay, let's make that decision as soon as when we finish the superintendent search discussion.
Good.
So, annual Board of Education self-evaluation. Did you want to introduce that?
Just to remind the board that as part of your governance handbook, your handbook calls for an annual self-evaluation. 2 years ago, we used CSBA with a facilitator. Last year, the board felt that they would use the same instrument but without facilitation. And this year, we have included that evaluation, that survey, and wanted to remind the board that the tabulation can be done on SurveyMonkey. So it doesn't require a lot of extra input in terms of staff.
Thank you for closing that door.
So this already exists as a SurveyMonkey document?
Yes, from last year.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I've looked, I'm sure you've all read through this questionnaire. I have one of the questions I think needs to be reworded. Other than that, there's a fair amount of redundancy in it, and I'd be willing to go through it and eliminate the redundancy if the board wants to do that. Sometimes redundancy is useful because you can look for consistency, so I'm open to.
In the creation of the survey to look for patterns and so forth.
So we can leave that, and I also would suggest that when we discuss this, we have the results from last year's evaluation for comparison.
That's a good idea.
So we'll be doing this prior to the actual meetings, taking the survey and having it tabulated, correct?
So I will need a homework reminder to know when I need to get this completed by.
Yes, okay. I'll discuss that with the superintendent, and we'll...
So we'll need to decide on a date for a board meeting. And what we would do is it would be a board conversation before a regularly scheduled board meeting.
Okay.
So we're talking about one of those two October board meetings
Yes.
as an open session starting at 5 o'clock with a wonderful dinner.
Okay, so John and I can talk to superintendent about this in our agenda meeting this week. I just wanted to suggest wording change to question number 17, because the current wording sounds like a Brown Act violation. It says the board and superintendent avoid surprises at meetings by discussing questions in advance whenever possible. We can't discuss questions in advance with each other. So I suggest rewording it to board members avoid surprises at meetings by discussing questions with the superintendent in advance of meetings whenever possible.
That's fine. That's clear.
Superintendent or assistant superintendent.
Well, officially, we always go through the superintendent. We can.
Oh, I violated that today.
Yeah, all right. But in any case, we want to be sure that it's not worded as if we're discussing it among ourselves, because we can't and we don't.
So for the purposes of the public to understand, it's just a matter of good boardsmanship and courtesy that if we have some very specific questions about something that is on the agenda, that we would let them know ahead of time so that they could prepare, and that we don't spring it upon them at the meeting. That's the idea.
Yeah, it's better that we get actual answers than just embarrass somebody. It
Right.
doesn't help anyone if we do that. Does anyone else have specific changes to this? Alan?
Well, I have some observations, actually.
Go ahead.
The governance handbook referred to in the beginning of the item has not actually been voted on. We didn't vote it into effect. The protocols, we had a number of amendments, we discussed them, but we never really voted on the final version.
Okay, so let's get that on the agenda.
Right, and that final version, under item 18, refers to censuring. And in there's a reference to bylaw 9005A, and that does not appear in our bylaws on our district website.
Right, I think that's my fault. I think I was supposed to suggest some rewording, and I didn't do it, so I'll get that before the
Yeah, I
next
think
meeting.
it really has a lot to do with governance and that sort of thing. The other thing I've been concerned that we really don't have a governance policy or protocol or something like Robert's Rules of Order, or SBCA has a governance.
Do you mean CSBA or SBCA?
The California
School
Board
Association.
They have a governance, almost like policies, almost like Robert's Rules, and
Well,
we
Alan,
really don't seem to follow that, and it causes problems for me.
Alan, you've brought this up before. The board has discussed it before, and the handbook says once something's been discussed and decided, we don't keep bringing it up. So
I don't think we have decided. I'm not sure.
We have voted on it, yeah.
I don't believe we did.
But we talked about some amendments, and then I don't know if we got back to them. Would it make sense to discuss that at the same time that we talk about our self-evaluation?
Yes, that's what I'm suggesting.
Do you want to include that in the self-evaluation
Yes.
discussion? Sure.
I think we'd have time,
That's a good point.
Okay.
because we can't talk about it today.
Right.
Also, I'd like to bring up the state ethics training that we've put in the protocols for new members, but current members are not currently taking that training. The city council takes that, and almost every governance body I've served on takes that as well. So
Okay,
I'd like to bring that up as well.
That's, okay.
Thank
We're kind of combining here a discussion of the governance handbook and the
But it is at the beginning of this.
self-evaluation.
But it is presented at the beginning of this item in the introductory paragraph.
The introductory, okay.
It is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it talks about the board government's handbook.
Yeah, well, it's mentioned.
In the backup.
In the backup, it's not actually part of the evaluation.
Well, the very first paragraph talks about the governance
Right.
handbook.
That's background information. But I'm just questioning whether, I'm not questioning whether we should discuss it, I'm just questioning whether we should have that as a separate item on the agenda.
Either one is.
It might be more efficient to
That's
discuss it
fine.
separately.
Sure, we can talk about it. Thank you.
Okay.
I think our president is good at figuring out timing.
I
so
agree.
Whichever seems to make more sense. But I think we should do both.
Okay.
I, for one, am ready to move on.
All right. Have we beat this one to a pulp? Then our next review and discussion item is superintendent search.
Yes. So I've announced my retirement effective at the end of this year, and we need to think about the search process. One of the easiest and clearest ways to begin that process is to issue an RFP for a search consultant. We've used search consultants for the last 3 superintendents. We've used one search consultant for the last 2 searches, but he has now retired. I have put together an RFP thanks to Berkeley Unified's recent search, and 2 other searches, one of which I gave to the board president. We sort of combined it all. I would like to have you go over the illustrated timelines and points to make sure that this process is the process that you would like, that the timelines are in order, and it allows for enough community input, et cetera. So if you could make any suggestions, either now or email them to me, we could flesh out this draft.
Okay, thank you. Now, as a procedural matter, I just wanted to say we have only one board member on the board now who has been through this process before, and that's Board Member Rosenbaum. So I've asked him if he would be willing to take the lead on this process, and I'll back him up, but he'll, when we're discussing these matters, he'll chair and make sure that the process carries through. So I'm going to turn it over to Ron. And Ron, I think Pat had a comment.
And I'll be glad to, even though my memory's failing me, it's been a while, but you know, I did read the RFP, the draft, and it does make a lot of sense to me. I don't really have any changes. I'll read it again. I read it pretty carefully. I also did list a number of agencies and sent those to President Black. Just looking at who is doing this kind of work and where they're doing the work right now. So, and we the school administrators have a journal that we get every week, and you can actually follow who's doing the majority and the quality of work, and then you can go online and actually look at these search agencies, which I've done.
Good.
Pat?
So I just had a small correction. I forgot if I sent it to you. So on page 1 of 3 of the RFP, under scope of work, you need to make that ensure rather than
Ensures, right.
ensures, just to have subject-verb agreement. And so the other question, I actually participated in the last superintendent search as a community member. They had panels of community members ask the various, I guess they selected the candidates, they narrowed it down, then they had panels of community members ask the narrowed down set of candidates questions, and then I remember we sat in a very large room and the various community members gave feedback to the board members about the different community members, and I found it to be, from that point, from my perspective, it was I thought it was a very good process, but it does take a while. So one of the things that I was concerned about is whether it's an aggressive enough timeline, and that whether we have enough time in the spring to involve the community, the parent community, and staff in vetting and looking at the smaller group of candidates.
And that's actually an interesting question, because I was going to bring up the same point. I made a note on this, that I think, the sooner we move, the more input we can get. I think the process when we hired Superintendent Stevenson was a good one. And I really think that not only do we need to involve our community of parents and in community in general, but our teachers as well. And I remember we as a board, I believe we divvied up going to each one of the school sites and asked for input from staff, and that takes time. I know that we partnered in twos.
I talked to Charlie Blanchard, who was also on the board at the time, about the process that they underwent, and he talked about the Community Search Committee and felt that it was a good idea, and it was very useful to the board. He did state that not every search firm is willing to work with a community search committee that actually interviews candidates, so that it should be stated explicitly in the RFP that we're going to do that. So I would suggest that if the board is agreed that we want to have that as part of the process, that we make sure the RFP states that we're going to have a community search committee and that it will be interviewing candidates.
That's a very good point. So
And some of the search firms actually mention that that's one thing that they do.
Okay.
What are the cons to, why do some of these search agencies not want to have a process in which the community interviews candidates? Do we know, or
Well,
does anyone?
I interviewed 5 search firms prior to putting the RFP together, and a number of search firms felt that community input was extremely valuable. Everyone felt that it was extremely valuable in the development of the leadership profile, but at the end of the day, it's the board's decision. They didn't preclude the community interview. As a matter of fact, when I asked them if they would be willing to do, they all said yes. Now, in terms of the timeline, as I recall, the community interview process was like on a Friday, and the board then interviewed the finalists on the next day, as I recall. There wasn't a lot of time.
Well, if we're bringing them in from out of town, that would be nicer to have them close together. Yeah, I think that's.
So I don't think
true.
that the timeline is too short, nor do I think it, if you move it back too soon, you're not going to attract the best qualified candidates. Superintendents usually don't make their decision to move until the first of the year.
I mean, I made that note about the timeline, and then I looked at it again and said, well, yeah, people do at March, I was thinking February, March, April, and that's really what works.
Mm-hmm.
So I do agree with Board Member Black's point, though, about even if they did say when you were interviewing them that they would be willing to do it, I would prefer it to be in the RFP.
Do we have a copy?
Because I don't think that if a person wants a job, they're going to say that they don't want to do something. I would prefer it to be in the RFP and to know that that's the type of agency or group that we're going to attract. And just to clarify, the firm that did it, the last process.
Gaddy and Associates, it was not in his contract. I looked. We'll just add it.
If we look at the scope of work, it says obtain staff and community input to, and ensures that all stakeholders are represented. So
right, and then I think we need to add the second interview, the community interview as part of the timeline.
Part of the timeline, yeah.
Right.
I can't remember, was the community was it comprised of staff members and parents, or, you went to the sites to get the input from the
We went
staff?
to the sites, yeah.
Okay.
No, staff
But
was involved.
Staff on
Staff
the interview
and
committees
community.
as well.
Okay.
But we at first were developing criteria of the kind of, the qualifications that we were looking for before we actually narrowed down the list of candidates.
Okay, thank you, Ron.
And you'll probably be pleased to know that Charlie Blanchard has agreed to serve on such a committee if we have one.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, tell him thank you.
Which is one of the things I really am requesting, because his memory, Charlie is wonderful. He keeps records of everything. And
Does he really?
Yes.
Good. Alan?
Alan?
So I had my notes that I would like to see the process collapsed as well somewhat. Things have a way of growing and growing and growing, and if we have a little bit of margin at the end, I think we'll have something to grow into, rather than be in a panic at the last minute when the superintendent is gone and we may be in a position to hire an interim for a while. So I would like to see the selection of the new superintendent collapse to sometime in April.
This is my fault. That's when you're missing April. It's not even on here.
Right.
So the interviews will be in April.
So, but I'd like to see a decision made, so we have the month of, at least in May, so that we have the month of June, and
right.
The contract is over July 1, is that correct?
We could actually nail dates down on the RFP, because
I agree.
But I think most people have expressed concern that schedule is a bit stretched, so I'd like to see it collapsed as well.
I agree with you, Board Member
Yes.
Maris.
I missed that April thing.
Yeah, it goes January, February, March, May, so April got lost, so we just changed May to April, and I
So
think
what
we've got
what
it.
I'd like to do is see, decide on the process of developing the RFP so that we can send it out as soon as possible.
That's correct,
Because I
yeah.
think that's something we should do. And, maybe a more specific timeline, and I'm willing to work on that, and I don't know, Paul and Marla.
And I'd like to thank the superintendent for staying around so we don't have to bring an interim in and process.
Yeah.
That we have a little more warning than we've had sometimes in the past.
Oh, really?
So do we need to actually
don't you
vote
remember?
to adopt the RFP, or is that something?
No, this is a review and discussion, so we should.
No, but I mean,
Yes.
we have to bring it back as an action item.
Yes, I think we should.
So I'd like to try to get that together within the next 2 weeks.
Well, why don't we
do that?
bring it back as an action item for the 24th? And
Yep.
then, Ron, you and I could sit down and make sure that, I'd like to flesh out the specific dates. It would be really better for Jackie
Right.
and for you folks if you knew exactly when we're going to try to accomplish
That
all
would
this.
be great.
Good.
Okay, are we prepared to move on?
Yes.
Okay, so now the pleasure of the board. We're supposed to be starting the unaudited actuals report at 8:35, so we're 5 minutes late for that, but we have 20 minutes of board policies. I don't think it will take us 20 minutes.
I don't either.
So I think we can go ahead with the schedule as it is, and if we're getting bogged down in the board policies, we can cut it short. Shall we try that?
That's fine for me.
Okay. So we have our first reading, Board Policy 6126.6, use of copyrighted materials, and the accompanying AR. Do we have any comments or questions on that one?
Just a comment, I really felt that this provided very good education on the copyright issues, and I think it makes it very
Yeah.
clear to us what the copyright issues are. I think we need to know. I certainly am not an attorney, so I don't know all the legal ramifications, but I really appreciate the clarification. I think it's going to help teachers quite a bit on whether or not they can use this piece of music or that piece of literature and copy it in class. I think it's very clear.
My only comment is it's very complex, actually. There's so much that, how do we actually get the message out?
Yeah, that was my...
Because I think it's really important that folks need to know, exactly what you can and can't do, and there's many pages of it. It was interesting to me. But it's like, and there was something about phonographic. Is that in this one?
Yes.
Isn't that an ancient term?
Yeah.
I had it highlighted, but I don't know where it is.
There's still people using V8 or VCRs and 8-track tapes too, so. And there, I think film strips were also mentioned, so some of that technology is somewhat
Changed.
antiquated, but.
Yeah.
What is a phonograph?
Yeah, so I agree. I think the training is going to be a key feature. I think between the BP and the AR, everything is covered. But I did notice, I was very interested to see this new paragraph on the first page of the BP, right at the bottom. It says, any literary, musical, dramatic, so forth and so on, or other original work shall be assumed to be a copyrighted work.
Yeah.
And that, it's kind of new to me. If you're not sure, just assume it's copyrighted. That didn't make its way into the AR, so I just want to be sure it makes its way into the training.
Yes, sir. We'll definitely make sure it gets into the training.
And there's a plan for training? I guess that's what my question
Well, once
is
the
going.
board adopts it, then it will be brought to the management team, and so that the site administrators are aware of it, and then they'll develop a plan to make sure that their staff are aware of it.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this one? We don't vote on them tonight. They'll be on the consent for the next meeting. Okay, the AR, related AR, comments or questions?
Same comments.
Right. Okay. The next one, on board policy of 9,000s, brings us to agenda and meeting materials.
Yes, we have Board Bylaw 9322, which remains intact, but for one area of mandated new law, which requires that the board has a separate agenda item when it's considering approving or rescinding its unconditional commitment to refrain from taking certain actions in violation of the Brown Act. It's a very convoluted way of saying something that we actually already do. So at the present time, we would like to add a paragraph to this bylaw that states that if a board member pulls a consent, an item off of the consent agenda, then individual consideration for action is considered a regular agenda item, so it's moved, just as we do now, and that we afford an opportunity for members of the public to comment on the agenda item that has not been previously considered. So it's really nothing, it doesn't change our practice. And then, well, actually, that is the only change.
And could I note on the public comment, it also describes public comment on items that are on the consent calendar.
Yes.
Which we allow also.
We allow, although there isn't a specific moment, we never ask for it, but certainly it's allowed. Now, do we need to begin asking explicitly for that at the beginning of right before voting on the consent?
It wouldn't be a bad idea to add that to our practice.
It would be a good idea.
That was my question, so that's good.
Alan?
So they talk about bringing up agenda items either by the public or by a board member. And
where is this, Alan? Page?
Oh, it's on page 99, I think. Let me see. Maybe 96. Let's see. I'm having trouble reading this. The print's so small.
You can
Well, 96 is a summary. Yeah.
No, that's too big.
Too big.
I mean, that's the problem.
This isn't something that was changed, right, Alan? It's something that's in the policy.
Well, it's somewhat of an observation. Right now, our protocols say that 2 board members may bring an item on the agenda. This says, gives more control to the superintendent or the board president in determining what goes on the agenda. It doesn't mention anything about a process where board members can pretty much automatically bring.
Well, if you can find the exact reference, we can...
Well, I'm going to have...
Because if it conflicts with the governance handbook, then we need to change one or the other.
Is it under agenda preparation, the board president and the superintendent at the bottom?
Yes, yes.
Right here. The board president and the superintendent shall work together to develop the agenda. Is that what?
Right.
Is that the?
No, where did you find that?
Again.
It's at the bottom of page 1 of 5 under the heading agenda preparation. I'm sorry. And then,
Okay. Got it.
So page 2 of 5, at the top, the board member or member of the public may request a matter within the jurisdiction. Now it's gone
The
off
board.
the side here.
Be placed on the agenda of a regular
Now it's
meeting.
gotten too small. Well, yeah, let's see. The request shall be in writing and be submitted to the superintendent or designee with supporting documentation. The board president and the superintendent in the next paragraph shall decide whether a request is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Items not within the subject matter jurisdiction may not be placed on the agenda. And our protocol basically says that if 2 board members wish to have an item on the agenda, the superintendent and the board president do not decide not to have it on the agenda.
Right, that's right.
So I think the point is it's not aligned.
Right.
Right,
The point is it's not aligned. So
Well, they don't explicitly conflict. I mean, they're complementary. This just doesn't include that language. These are other ways by which things can be considered for the agenda. But in addition, if 2 board members request it, then it will go on regardless
Right.
of this. And that, I think,
We could add
I would
that
be
to the
happy to have that in here as well. I think it'd be
I would say,
consistent.
I think, I don't know if you're asking us to add that language, Alan, but I would be comfortable with that.
I would like to see that the public and the other board members have a little more influence on what goes on the agenda than the board president and the superintendent strictly.
Well, the language in the board bylaws is in the bylaws and probably mandated by law. That's how most of this gets in here. So we can add the language that's in the governance handbook to this, and this certainly is the law that if someone can submit, any member of the public may request a matter in writing.
So I would like to ask that we add that, and let's look at the language before we adopt the board policy.
Sure.
Great.
Did Steph get that?
Is that good with you, Alan?
Yes.
Okay.
So this would come back as a separate action item rather than a consent item then, if we add that?
Yes.
Because we'll want to look at it. Okay.
Good.
Also, is it clear on page 106 that if 4 board members are present, a 2/3 vote, this is for putting an emergency item on the agenda, where you need 4 or 5 votes to do so? If you have only 4 members present, is it a 4 vote or is it a 3 vote?
Sorry, if you have,
If you have 4 board members present,
then it's unanimous.
that what?
No.
If less than 2/3 of the members are present, then a unanimous vote is required. If you have everybody here, you need 4 out of 5. If anybody's missing, you need everybody who's present.
Okay, so 4 is not 2/3, 4 is 80%.
greater than 2/3.
It's 2/3 or more. It's,
Okay.
we can't.
All right.
I thought about
That
that
makes
too.
it clear too.
Right.
So I just want to make clear that if 4 members are present, it takes a vote of 4 to pass an emergency.
On those kind of
Yes.
items.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay.
Also, another item in here, and I think it's on page 107. It's about audio, this is about the Attorney General challenging violations of the
District
Brown
Attorney.
Act. And that they may require as evidence video or audio recordings of closed session meetings, which we don't currently do.
We haven't been ordered to do so by the Attorney General.
So once
actually
the
the
Brown Act
district
has been
attorney.
violated.
District attorney.
District Attorney. Sorry?
What's your proof? What's your proof? Once the Brown Act is, you're accused of violating the Brown Act, how are you going to get a recording of that activity once it's already been
Oh, it's
done?
not retroactive. It's if you have, if the,
Well, that's what makes sense, but
right, if the district attorney believes you are violating the Brown Act, he can require you to record closed session items, closed sessions, so that he can review them and see if in fact you are violating the Brown Act. But he'd have to have reason for believing it, and that would have to come from some other source.
but the actual violation cannot be recorded because
He'd be looking for future
He'd be looking
violations.
I think they'd be looking for a pattern
Right.
of a school
Okay.
board that actually continues to violate. I mean,
So that's clear? That's, we're
Yes.
not required to,
No, we're not
Audio
required
tape
to
while
audio,
we're-
to do any
Closed
audio.
sessions, okay.
and I don't recall any incidents of that actually happening in California.
Thank you.
I haven't heard
But
of
it
that.
is in the law, and the district attorney does have the right to challenge any public board.
Okay. Anything else?
Is there any public comment?
Public comment on these? The public's still got their eyes open, that's remarkable. Okay, 90E, oh, this is an exhibit for the
Right.
bylaws. This is the letter that we send to the district attorney if we have been, is that right?
Yes, yes.
No questions.
Action requiring. Okay.
And these are mandated changes to this bylaw.
Okay, so any comments or questions?
Well, on Exhibit 1, I have concerns about Item 6, inapplicable zoning ordinances, and how that's settled. if we have a zoning ordinance, how does it become inapplicable?
What's the page, Alan?
Number 6, page 109,
109.
I believe, it's Exhibit
109.
1.
At the, almost at the bottom,
Number 6.
number 6.
Oh, I think that's what we have lawyers for. Yeah, that would be, boy, that would be a nightmare.
Yeah, it would.
That's something that would go to the lawyer, I think.
And that is not a change. It's our current bylaw.
Yeah, we don't have to vote on that anyway because it's currently in the bylaw and as mandated by law. Anything else?
No, it's just something to be aware of. It's a comment that could really be messy.
Okay.
You have to be aware that we don't want to get caught in that.
And Exhibit 2 is our unconditional commitment letter saying what we will do having been accused of a violation of the Brown Act.
All good
All good?
for me.
Alan?
I've been able to express myself. That's good, yeah, thank you.
Great. That brings us to our unaudited actuals financial report.
Some of our audience managed to stay for some really good news, I think. So unaudited actuals, what this report represents is, well, first it's required to be presented to the board by September 15th of each year. What it represents is the changes since the estimated actuals, which were presented to you in June, along with the adopted budget. And the really important points in the unaudited actuals, it really identifies the final 12-13 ending fund balance and reserve amounts for all district funds. Again, I try to limit what I put up on the screen because I know it's, the numbers are really difficult to read. And all of this, of course, this is a summary of everything that's incorporated into this really large document that I'm sure you all have read. I know most of you have because you sent some very interesting questions. So the things that you really want to look for, estimated to unaudited, is so what has changed since June when we estimated where we thought we would end the year and where did we end the year? So again, in the actual document, there's very specific detail line by line of exactly what those dollars are associated with. But for the summary, our revenues increased by $688,000, and our expenditures decreased by 1.279. So we ended up with an ending fund balance increase of 1.144. And so most people say, well, why did that change from a couple months ago? And so what happens is, for example, we received more revenue due to special education and special education mental health funds. And that was due primarily to the distribution method that our SELPA was using. Was it a reimbursement or an ADA? And they actually went to the ADA. So that generated some additional funds for us. And overall, our special education program cost went down this year. So that was good. So that reduced the amount of funds that we transfer into special education. And this is really a highlight, I think, of the year, is the Aquatic Center exceeded projections for the year. They actually ended with a positive of $200,000 in surplus over their revenues and expenses amount. So we were really, really, really surprised and extremely happy. And the last few months of the year, the April, May, June, those are those core months of high usage, and those dollars come to us about 2 or 3 weeks later. So we were really happy with how that program ended the year, and it seems to be doing just as well this year at this point.
When we were talking about building a pool, we were talking about minimizing the deficit that would create and take away.
Right.
So seeing that we were actually making a profit
we actually made a profit. And what is really good about having...
Congratulations to everybody.
Yeah. Amanda Garcia has done an amazing job with the program.
Please give her our thanks.
Yes. And what's really nice about them having that $200,000, so if this year, for example, maybe isn't as profitable, it won't eat into general fund dollars, because those are funds that are earmarked for the aquatic center. Or, for example, if they have some equipment that is now no longer under warranty, that needs to be repaired, they have a little working capital. So it's really good for that program. Expenditures, 1.2 less. And why is that? Well, when we do our estimated actuals, that's the budget. So we're assuming at that time that, to the best of our knowledge, these are the funds that will be spent. Reasons that they weren't spent. The Child Development Fund, another highlight of last year, ended up actually being a self-supporting program. And that was due primarily to Susan Stevenson, who has done a great job of looking at how many students they have, and she's somewhat over-enrolled in the fall, so then that means that when springtime rolls around, if there is another district that under-enrolled, we can actually request funds from that district. So that's exactly what we did. It's a little tough in the front part because we're a little overloaded with students. But once we're already serving those students, and they all talk, so usually in October they kind of have an idea of will we be over or under enrolled. And so she felt comfortable over enrolling in October. And so when April, May rolled around, she was able to request funds from an under enrolled program, and they ended the year with a positive balance. That's how it works, yes.
So
and again,
another set of congratulations is in order.
Yeah, they have done an amazing job of, if a student drops, they are absolutely on the list to replace that student. Amazing job. I can't say enough about how they really turned that program around and utilized funds from another program. So that would have been a transfer out of our general fund, so that also reduced our expenditures. The big ones, and within the document you will see, the funds that were earmarked for supplies, equipment, and contracts were unexpended. And a lot of that was due to planning for Common Core and moving forward and knowing that we were going to need some additional funds going into this year. So those funds will be budgeted when you get the first interim report in December, because they actually are considered carryover funds. And this is what those carryover funds look like. And this is in, I believe, page 19 of the actual document. And so when you say, well, we increased our fund balance by 1.18, which is absolutely true. But then when you go down and you start saying, well, there's revolving cash. We just talked about the Aquatic Center, which has $200,000 set aside. Technology. We had earmarked funds last year for technology and Common Core and Chromebooks, knowing full well that we couldn't order them all at once because our tech department is just limited with staffing to get all those up and going. So those funds will be budgeted this year to continue with, actually half of them have already been expended for Chromebook purchases and supporting Common Core. Some of the others are site-specific, field trip funds, instructional materials for Common Core, state lottery funds. Those get redistributed to the sites for site expenditures. And then when you go over to unrestricted, or to restricted, which aren't nearly as interesting as unrestricted, because it's basically state lottery restricted, SELPA, which is $250,000, which does not belong to the district. That belongs to our SELPA. And then we have, our donations, our athletics, all those funds carried forward into current year. So actually, when you get down to the bottom, we really only increased our fund balance by $203,000. So really, we did a great job of planning last year, a great job of looking forward, anticipating Common Core expenditures. Again, the Aquatic Center and Children's Center were, very instrumental in helping us maintain our fiscal solvency. So yeah, we probably now have about a 19% reserve, incredibly healthy and positive. And that's why I was sort of sad to see that everyone has deserted us, because now for the first time this is my 6th year here, moving forward, I'm very excited about the budget and where we are and our reserves. And we have LCFF funds, which are still sort of Yet to be determined exactly what those will look like, but we know it'll be an increase. So we have that in addition to a healthy fund balance. We have programs that are self-supporting. We don't have furlough days that we need to reinstate. So I think at this point, we are in excellent shape, and I think it's very positive, and I feel like I really hope that the word gets out to a lot of the people that were here that we are going to be doing some things, and we do have some funds now available to enhance programs or other items. So I think that the Superintendent Stevenson and the board should be really commended for getting us through the last 4 or 5 years and ending like this. We look amazing.
So just to, before we go off the subject, I just was obsessed with the pool.
Yes.
So I asked poor Assistant Superintendent Harden quite a number of questions. I'm going to ask a couple I think are good in open session so people understand. So originally we had talked about the fact that we were going to move some general fund money over to cover the use of the pool by the school, swim team, PE classes, and so forth. Did we do that?
No, we did not. They were completely self-supporting.
Okay, so, and the second question that I asked her was, I remembered at the very beginning of our conversation about the pool, when we were very concerned, we had talked about moving some general fund money over during their startup period because we were concerned that, it was a startup period and it would be difficult for them to start bringing in revenue immediately. Was that repaid, or did we?
Absolutely. We only did that for the first few months of the year simply due to cash flow. Because, the fees that are paid online and, all of those things are typically running 3 to 4 weeks behind. So we did transfer money in, but then as soon as their funds became, started accumulating and they were absolutely in the red, we moved the money back.
Thank you very much for the clarifications.
Okay. Alan?
So I really appreciate your excitement with these results.
It is exciting.
And
for
you
the fact
deserve
that
a lot of the credit.
first-
Thanks for giving it to us, but to the superintendent.
Absolutely. I mean, we in the business office simply prepare the reports and, follow directives, but, it's the board and the
So
superintendent
what
that
I
are really.
like best is that we're basically solving our structural budget deficit problem. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
We're 200,000 ahead, and we could be a lot more ahead if we didn't spend on some things that we already need. For example, the technology that we're trying to build.
Right. And that's why last year, looking forward, people were a little more conservative, knowing that we would need additional funds this year to fund some of these items. So it's really good.
And it's not just preparing reports. It's the leadership that you've been providing to us and the stewardship and having us understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Makes
It's invaluable. Yes. Thank you.
Well, I'm just proud for the district because we are in so much better shape than so many districts. So many districts. I mean, I look at our ending balances and I realize that there's so many districts right now I read daily that are reinstating furlough days and reinstating salary rollbacks. And I'm thinking, gosh, we made it without doing those things. And now we are at a place where we can start moving forward again.
So do we have a list of things like the technology that we've started spending money on? Some more wish lists coming along where we could use some.
Yeah, well, a lot of these funds are
additional-
already being expended. For example,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, the technology funds, I believe they've already spent probably more than half.
And do we want to spend more than that eventually?
That is a question for.
No, we have been spending on technology all along the way, and we are our network, our wireless, with the addition of our Chromebooks, we are ahead of the game in terms of
But I'm thinking
any assessment requirements.
we have this whole facilities planning process coming where we're going to be seeing
Right.
some huge needs.
Yes, absolutely.
Financial needs.
Now, one thing we need to talk about at some point is the expiration of the emergency parcel tax.
Good.
And I think that we might want to agendize a discussion.
Yeah, I was
of
going to
that.
ask for that.
So So associated with that then is the follow-up that we promised about the continued discussion in the fall, once we had a better understanding of what our financial status would be about program restoration priorities. And we said at that time, as I remember, and I think it still makes a lot of sense, that we need to have that discussion with the community in conjunction with the discussion of the emergency parcel tax, and whether they still think, whether there are additional things that they would still be willing to pay for if we can't cover that. Elementary music, additional technology.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I mean, that, it's up to the community and the staff to, but we had the beginning of that conversation, and I think we need to continue that. And I hope it'll be exciting for Lori to bring us the news once it becomes clearer about what LCFF will, projections will have for our district.
Right. Yeah, thank you for that, Pat, because that was something I was going to bring up. We've started the board conversation on spending priorities, and we should go along with it somewhat further. Ron?
I mean, I just wanted to point out that, I mean, there are a lot of folks and a lot of people and a lot of programs that you know, we don't talk about every day, that are working together to really solidify our budget. I sent out to Assistant Superintendent Hardin a question on the warrants, which I didn't bring up in open session, but I'm just going to mention it. You know, I was curious, looking at the amount of money we spend on AT&T bills. Because I know we're instituting voice over internet, which is going to save us a lot of money. So I was curious, and the response is that this is moving forward, and Brian Highland is moving on it, and we're testing and making sure everything's working as we phase out AT&T. There's the small things that come together that, you know, and I was really happy to hear that.
Yeah, I have
simple questions.
Two observations on this budget, that just things that struck me that I thought were very interesting. On page, if you want to follow along, page 245, there's a table, minimum classroom compensation, and the state I believe it's the state, requires us to spend 55% of our total budget on classroom compensation. That's teachers and instructional aides. And there were two things about this that I thought were interesting. One is that of our total compensation, total salaries and benefits, 1/3 is benefits. So our teachers and instructional aides get 1/3 of their compensation in benefits. And with that, we're required to spend 55% of our budget on teachers and instructional aides, and we spend 65% of our budget on that. So with all the other expenses on technology, on AT&T, on equipment, on administration, we're still spending a good deal more than the mandated minimum on our teachers, which I think is what the board wants. Yeah. And I'm proud and glad to say that we are doing that.
And I actually asked a question related to that, just out of curiosity. You know, if we could somehow calculate, you know, the amount on an average that we spend on each one of our employees, you know, in teachers in ATA or whatever.
I think if you want an average, I think you can take the numbers here and divide.
Yeah,
by the number
well, that didn't feel like doing the math. I thought maybe we had the answer. But that's, you know, because we spend, and I also had questions about the difference between benefits and health benefits, which I got answered. It's not actually in the document, but it was in the bar graph that you had attached.
Did you want to let us know your question? Or about the health benefits?
Yeah, I asked Superintendent, because there's a circle graph at the beginning in the explanation, and it says benefits, and then it says health.
Health and welfare.
Health and welfare.
Right.
And so what's the difference between the two? So maybe you can answer that.
Right, and the benefits would be workers' comp, state employment insurance, retirement, everything other than health and welfare.
And that was leading me to my next thought, is like, how much do we actually spend? Paul just told us, actually.
Pat?
Let Ron finish.
No, that's it.
So then, so I just want to clarify that, so Paul was looking and got clarification from you that we are spending about 65%, which is above the required 55% on our salaries and benefits for our staff and employees, which is something I agree that we want. And then he said that 1/3 of that is on
benefits.
health and welfare and benefits. And I would like to know, and perhaps you could tell me in the future, whether in the county, whether that 1/3 number is the average. In other words, I would like to know if in other districts they are receiving more in salary and less in benefits, and where
Or vice versa.
or vice versa.
Yeah, we probably could.
But I'm not asking you to deliver it now.
I think we can get you that information. The only caveat to that is the districts that have years ago assumed health and welfare into the salary. And so that you begin to lose what that benefit would have cost because employees must purchase their own. Their salary initially 10 years ago they combined benefits and added it into the salary.
I've heard of that in certain districts.
Right, so that might be a little harder to tease out what exactly that benefit might look like.
Yeah, and the thing about this particular form is you would almost need the form from a district because everyone has different workers' comp rates. Everyone has different SUI rates, state unemployment insurance rates. So you almost need to get down to, hence the meaning of the form, the actual percentage that you're spending overall, including all health and
So I don't
benefits.
wish to make this a extremely onerous and time-consuming task. It's more that I would just want
curious.
more of a ballpark sense of whether we are about doing what other districts are doing, or are we very different in certain ways within the county?
I think that HR can do that for us.
I mean, I think, I agree. I would really like to see that.
That would be
I know
interesting.
we're committed to staying at least at the median, so that kind of data we haven't looked at in a few years.
I have
yes,
if I may,
please.
a broader question about the current adopted budget, which we adopted in June, and it's a $1.2 million deficit this year, 1.4 next year, and 2.7 or something the following year because of the expiration of the parcel tax. And I know those numbers aren't solid. That's based on the old formula. We have a new formula. But can you say, based on what you've done and presented here tonight, anything about our adopted budget? What about those deficits? Are they still there?
You know, the thing with the adopted budget, because as you mentioned, the funding is completely different. That adopted budget, especially the revenue portion, is really null and void. It is completely off compared to what we probably will get.
It's obsolete because
It's just completely off because, you know, the categorical programs that show in other state revenue, those no longer exist. They now show in the, you know, the top number of revenue, and so it'll be completely different. As far as the deficit, certainly additional income from LCFF will help with that. We're not exactly sure what that calculation is yet, nor are we sure what strings are attached. That's supposed to come out in no later than March. Go by now. It makes it very difficult. But nonetheless, we will have more money, and we will be, you know, looking at less of a deficit. Now, multi-year projections are an entirely different animal because the problem is COLAs, cost of living allowances, and everything that we've used in the past no longer exist. We're not guaranteed, COLAs, that word is completely gone because now it's called a funding gap. And no one knows what that funding gap may or may not be in future years. So everyone right now is really struggling with multi-year projections. Even county offices aren't really sure how they're going to assess a district's fiscal picture because we're not really sure what to use because we have no idea. That funding gap is dependent on what the state decides they can fund. This year, the funding gap, they funded 12%, or they're saying they'll fund 12% of the gap. Will that be 12 next year too? Will it be 5? We don't know.
So they might be more lenient with districts that are showing, projecting spending down their reserves, for example, to below the minimum requirement?
Yeah,
Or maybe.
Potentially, and another issue that's on the horizon is what that reserve percentage should be. Because they're thinking, they haven't changed the law yet, but they're thinking 3% probably is no longer adequate. Because the unknowns are even greater, and it's based on your population and how many free and reduced kids you may or may not have, and so all of a sudden the variables are much larger, and so they're thinking perhaps districts may need to consider a larger reserve to prepare for those. Not, again, obviously not 19%, but certainly they may look at doubling that for districts in the future, just so that
I had heard 8%. What?
8.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many unknowns right now. It makes it really difficult. And I wish I had a better answer for our deficit and multi-year. Once we start working on the first interim report, hopefully we'll have some better information. And when we bring that to you, have a better idea of at least this year's deficit. Future years, I'm not really sure. We're waiting for county direction, actually, to see how we're supposed to prepare those documents.
That might affect, the whole discussion about a parcel tax. Like, we might all be thinking, oh, we got 19%, we're rolling at 19%. And then when we see the first interim, people may feel a little differently about what our situation is. So we'll have to sort of keep all that in mind.
Yeah, and it's going to be a little difficult, too, with the issue of not exactly knowing what accountability factors are going to be applied to those funds. And we won't know that by first interim. We won't know that probably until second interim.
So you mean the cost of that as well, is that it? Or?
Well, so with LCFF, if, let's say, we're getting $1 million in additional revenue, just ballpark, they may come back and say, but of that million, $400,000 is generated from your EL and free and reduced students. Those funds have to be expended this way. And the other funds can be expended however you wish. So the whole concept of saying we're funding you with unrestricted dollars and local control, it's
a myth.
It's really
It's a little unclear yet.
It's a little unclear.
How much local control there will be.
Exactly. And I think there will be a lot of accountability tied to the new dollars.
I would guess so too. I agree.
One of the things that we need to consider is, should you want to go out for an additional parcel tax to replace the one that will expire, you would want to do that in 2014.
Right.
And the latest possible time to do that would be November of 2014, which means you have to start backing things up. So we would want to make a decision on that. I think we want to have an initial discussion in November of this year, and then a follow-up discussion in late January, and a decision, one way or the other, no later than end of March.
And when would the first interim be coming out again?
December.
Okay.
Anything else from the audience? We need a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
The unaudited actuals.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. And we have one more item, improving the path of travel for Ocean View Elementary School students.
Yes, the board asks that staff write a letter that would go to not only UC Berkeley, but to the city council. And I have made a stab at it. So do we have any additions, deletions, changes that you would like?
It looked okay to me.
So Marla and I talked about this, and she's had a chance to think about it. At
I'm
least.
directionally challenged, is what Helen is trying to say.
So the next to the last paragraph, about the last sentence, it says, installation of a boardwalk or sidewalk on the easement in order to provide a walkway for kids coming from UC Village to Monroe. The walkway diverts students to the east
But it's the
and allows
west.
them. I believe they're going to go to the west to get onto campus. not
Oh,
to the east.
that's
Made perfect
you,
sense to
good of
me.
you to notice. That's
Hey,
fine.
put it right in the middle of Monroe.
Thanks for catching
Thank
that.
you.
Thanks for catching that. So presumably, if we approve this, it will be with that change. Anything else?
I'll move the item for the letter for improving the path of travel for Ocean View Elementary School students.
With a change.
With a
from-
change of direction.
of direction.
I'll second.
I'll second.
You can second it.
Okay,
no.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes our business for tonight and brings us to board and superintendent comments.
Yes, I will be out of the district on Monday, taking our student board members to Santa Clara for student board member training.
Sounds like fun.
Okay, I had one item. I forwarded to the board a letter we got from Preston Jordan, who's on a city committee that's considering, I guess it's considering changes to the city charter, and among that is whether we wanted to talk about changing term limits for the board. We had discussed this before, and they're just getting around to getting back to us to ask us if we want to talk about it. So
It seems like they're asking if we changed our mind, because I think we
right, well,
had already decided.
do we want to just agendize this so that we can send a letter to them asking them to consider it, or not?
I think we should discuss it. I would be in favor of discussing it as an option.
Okay, so let's
Yes.
put it on the agenda.
I agree.
Yes,
Yeah.
All right, we'll add it to the agenda. Thank you. Any other comments? Pat?
The first comment I have is that a member of the San Bruno School Board has contacted me and asked me to attend one of their board meetings to give have a brief conversation or give a brief presentation about how we addressed equity in our district. Now, she was very sweet. They said they don't have, they could only provide gas money, and they really appreciated us coming and so forth. And she suggested Wednesday, October 9th. And what I wanted to share this with you because first, I don't believe that I am the board member who took leadership on this issue, although I supported you. I believe that in my memory, Board President Black and Board Member Rosenbaum really had the most conviction and really pushed this forward, and I just followed along in their coattails. So,
Although you were on the task force.
yeah, so what I'm saying is that if any individual member of the board or any of two of you would like to be the people to go, you should let me know. Otherwise, I will make the effort. I feel that they have reached out a number of times. It is not that easy for me to go in the evenings, but I feel that it's a service that I should do for them. I just don't know if I'm best qualified to do so. So should any of the rest of you wish to give a little community service to another district, please let me know.
What's the date of that again?
It's Wednesday, October 9th, or you might be able to negotiate with them. I have to tell them fairly soon to do it on on a different October evening, I could look up their board schedule and they could do it maybe 2 weeks later.
Oh, they want it in the evening at a board meeting?
It's at a board meeting. They want it to be televised, I think. They want the community to hear a little description of it. But so you let me know later. Yeah, I know it's a difficult time. It's very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to share that. And then the second thing I wanted to mention briefly is that the Albany Triathlon, which I'm sure Board Member Maris is going to talk about, is coming up. I'll let him talk about it on
Go ahead.
on Saturday, October 5th. Well, I'm very excited because I will tell you right now, I was inspired by the entire community and two of my fellow board members and all of these moms. So I'm actually going to try it this this year. I've been practicing. I've been practicing to do that 17 times the short way across the swimming pool. It's taken a lot of practice. But anyway, I'll let board member Maris tell you about that. So I hope anybody who's interested will come and volunteer or take part in that. However, on the very same day, there is a Albany Middle School Fall Festival, which is one of their major fundraisers. So they asked me to say that if you finish the triathlon and you would like to get some lunch or go to the silent auction, please go over to the Fall Festival between 10 and 2. At first, they tried to ask me to get the triathlon people to change the route so they ended at the middle school, but I think that we might have time for that. So anyway, please support the Albany Triathlon and the AMS Fall Festival on Saturday, October 5th.
Good. Well, I have a list of a couple of things here. If I'm next.
Go ahead, Al.
Recognized. Thank you. I wrote down that I was very concerned that we hadn't started discussing the parcel tax issue yet, and it sounds as though we've already got the support for that, so sometime in November. I know that the city has proposed that the school district join them in the maintenance center, and before we decide on that, I'd at least like to have a look at our facilities planning, so I have a sense of whether that's an appropriate decision, better sense. And that's coming up?
Part of our facilities master plan.
Right. And that's coming up next meeting?
Yes.
Or next month?
Well, now, we had not intended to speak directly to the maintenance center.
But that's a facilities issue. I think it's been for a long time.
The complete report, this is an updated report, sort of a progress report, and to alert the board to some concerns at one of our facilities that needs to have more immediate action. December will be the board meeting where we bring the complete report with recommendations from the steering committee to the board.
Okay. Just so we kind of keep our options open. I know it's very expensive to go with the city right now, but maybe we could negotiate something with them as well that worked a little better. So a couple of quick things. I attended a very active first meeting of parents at the child care center. It was just before this. It was at 5 o'clock. So that's looking good at the child care center. Build On, which built the school in Nepal last year, is looking, and the students already told us about this, would like to make a presentation to the board. Make a public presentation so the public is aware. And
yes,
I'm talking to one of the students. He'll email me what he wants to do, and hopefully we can talk about it.
Tell them to bring pictures, slides.
Yeah, right. They have some great pictures on the wall at the high school. So. The Build Leads committee is starting their work on the Build Leads program for career technology. I think that Barone has done a great job of getting that started. The committee is made up of architects and contractors, and so.
You will participate, board member?
I'm going to be on the task force. Unfortunately, I had a fishing trip planned for the first meeting with my son, so.
Oh, there'll be more than one meeting.
Oh, there's going to be more than one meeting. And then on the triathlon, it was a great fundraiser last year. It raised $2,600 for our athletic programs. And we're hoping to raise more this year. We currently have about 50 participants signed up, and usually the participants sign up the last couple of weeks. We were on the stroll and got a lot of attention. And we need volunteers. That was the last thing I was going to say. Thanks for reminding me. I'm going to the PAWS group to try to get volunteers, but anybody in the community, it's a great event. People have a lot of fun, and I think it's fun to watch, it's fun to participate, and it's fun to help out. So you can go to albanystry.com to get the information on registration and what the course looks like. It's a very easy course. It's meant to encourage physical fitness in the community as well as to raise funds for the school district. So it's October 5th. And thank you, Pat, for your input. Here's somebody who's going to do it.
Try to do it.
Try is the key word, yeah.
Ron.
So I'm loath to bring this up, and I've been debating it all during this meeting. But, you know, I'm concerned about the safety of our students. And we have an issue that periodically raises its ugly head, and that has to do with, particularly with Fridays and freshmen at the high school. And, you know, I'm very glad to hear that there's been very active responses by the high school staff and the high school administration. But I think it's important that we are clear that there are certain forms of behavior that are not only mischievous but dangerous, and that we are not tolerant of that kind of behavior. So I know that and I want to assure the public that the administration is well aware and is taking action.
Would you like a staff report on the
Sure.
aftermath? Okay.
I just, I mean, for me, it's just that we need to be clear that, that in Albany, we're Albany, and that's the kind of thing that, that all our students are entitled to be safe, and that we are responsible for them not only at school, but when they're going home from school and coming to school, and there's even interrelationship of things that could happen on the weekend that are actually school involved.
Thank you for bringing that up, Board Member.
I didn't want to end on a negative note, and I've been just sitting here.
No, I think it's very, very important that we make clear that it is not acceptable in our community.
Do you guys have any feelings about that, or what's been going on?
Well, we are seniors after all, but we still feel like it's a very important thing to teach seniors that it's really not worth it to jeopardize your entire future by getting a suspension after all the work you've done. Like every Friday, right before school ends, Dr. Barone would go and announce how many suspensions have been there recently.
Excellent.
And that's really good, because when people hear that, they're like, oh, I don't want a suspension,
And advisory teachers are usually good about reminding the students each Friday, especially the upperclassmen, that it's inappropriate behavior and that, we were all freshmen once and it does not feel great to be the victim.
That's wonderful. That's
Great.
good to hear. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, with that, meeting is closed.